Welcome to my throne of history. Actually, it's a chair in my living room with a black sheet thrown over it. But in history, you need to learn to use your imagination. So you better start using yours. From this throne, imagination, come on. From this throne, I'm going to take you on a journey of 10,000 years in 23 weeks. Crash helmet and full harness 5-point seatbelt probably required. We're going to go from 8000 BC until yesterday. Back in the time of COVID, there's a bit more history for you. Back in the time of COVID, I made a video for each of those 23 periods for children who were out of school because of lockdown. We're going to start by looking at the video I made for this period, and then you come back here to my throne. You've got it, haven't you? Yep. Come back here to my throne and I'll give you some more information and some ideas of how you could have a go at living in that period.
Try to remember.
Well, we have to remember this time that we don't really have to remember anything. We're going to find out lots of things. Although we do have to remember one thing, which is very similar in a way to what's happening to us now. So, shall we get on? This is what we've called the Plantagenets again, and it goes from 1301 to 1400. It starts off with Edward I, who was still fighting up in Scotland and eventually died, and his son Edward II took over for a brief time, and then his son Edward III took over. Did they like the name Edward? They seem to have done, don't they? But in 1315, this period of 100 years, the population of England reduced by 2 million. It was only 4 million at the start, just over 4 million, and it was cut in half, and it was for two main reasons. Firstly, in 1315 there was a lot of heavy rain, and I'm still annoyed with my hair. It's now 2 weeks since we started these, and do you know the other thing? I'll just tell you this. I was watching the last two. I'm a glutton for punishment, yes. I was watching the last two. I thought, oh, I've got chocolate on my face. Yeah, because I could see it, see? Yeah. Well, it's not. It's the fact that some of my beard is not as grey as the rest of my beard. A very small part, yes, it is a very small part. But anyway, let's return to the heavy rain. And there was a famine. And unfortunately, a lot of people died from starvation. And then 30 years later, in 1348, as you may know, there was the Great Plague, the Black Death. And that is where the majority of those 2 million people who disappeared from the population number died. And it was a terrible time. We'll tell you all about it. Before that, in 1337, the 100 Years' War started, and that lasted for 116 years. And why didn't it last 100 years? Well, that would have been too logical, wouldn't it, really? Historians don't do things like that. It lasted 116 years and went on and off. It wasn't like war that, well, I was going to say we know, but you don't really know, but not like wars that happened just before I was born. The Second World War, which basically went on for 6 years. The 100 Years' War, there was a battle here, then there was another battle, then they all went home, and 20 years later they might have had another battle, and then they might have had another one. So it wasn't a continuous war as such. We tell you a little bit more about monks and nuns, and also about knights and merchants, and we tell you about something that was started called the Order of the Knights of the Garter, and it was a heraldic order, I think is the best way of describing it, and every year the Knights of the Garter, and I think I'm correct in saying there are only 24 of them, parade through Windsor, around Windsor Castle. And in fact, last year we were going, weren't we? We were invited. We were going to go and see, but it was cancelled because of COVID. And I very much doubt that it's going to be held this year, because I think our invitation is held over, and we can still go, because we would, wouldn't we? Yes. So we tell you about the Knights of the Garter, and then we tell you about the end of the Plantagenets in about 1399, so that's very convenient that they ended there. And following on from that, we give you a little family tree, so that you can perhaps see how everybody ended up as king or not king, because the following 100 years, from 1401 to 1500, there is non-stop wars towards the end of it, called the Wars of the Roses, between the houses of Lancaster and York. And kings were changing every so often for no reason. They didn't actually die, somebody else took over and they ran away and came back, and then they became king again. So next time it's going to be pretty exciting. So we've done that family tree. One of our projects, if you're sitting at home from school and you haven't got all that much work to do, I'm sure you have, and I hope you have, but we've asked you to draw a family tree of your family. So if you go to the website and go to your turn, what are you doing? You turned. If you go to the website and go to your turn, no, and go to, I think it's Little Owlet's project, isn't it? It's one of your projects for younger people. It tells you how to draw up a family tree, and you could do that for us. You could do that for yourself, actually, and see, look at parts of your family, who's who, who's where. And you can take it back as far as you like. We've only, I think, done it for your parents and then your grandparents and aunts and uncles, but you can go further back than that if you like. You can't, because you don't know. No, I don't. I don't really know mine, except my great-great-grandfather was supposedly one of the first people to measure Ben Nevis. Who was Ben Nevis? No, it's a mountain. And he worked for the Ordnance Company, or Ordnance Survey. And that's the story that I was told. Who knows? But that's something you might like to do. So, and what haven't we done yet? No. Your hoots. Yes, indeed. Your hoots. We haven't not said goodbye. So, homes, we look at a great manor house, great manor hall. You tell them about that, don't you? Clothes, we try to give you a good description of what they would be wearing at that time, and also explain that although some people were wearing linen underwear, bad quality linen is a bit like sandpaper. So it can't have been that pleasant. Yes, Owlbut says if you want you could try stuffing sandpaper in your underpants and see what... No, don't do that sort of thing. It wouldn't be very pleasant anyway. So, food, once again they're eating a lot of flying things. We also tell you a story, and I'll show you something in a minute. We also tell you a story about when they laid the table, spoons were always laid face down, so that the bumpy bit, can't think of it any other way, was upwards. And the reason they did that is because they thought the devil was involved in the other bit. Because if you look in a spoon, go and look in a spoon, shall we? We'll go and look in a spoon in a minute. If you look in a spoon, on the side that's sunken in, you will see yourself upside down. Whereas on the other side, you will see yourself the right way up. And these people didn't understand why that was. And if you don't, that's something you should be asking your science teachers. So, this is history, geography, sorry. But that's why the spoons were always put that way down. And then we talk about guilds and street names. how certain streets came to be named. And finally in culture, we once again look at jousting, where they used to have tournaments and knights would ride at each other with long lances on poles and try and knock each other off horses. Strange people, us human. Yes, I think we are. Right, so that's that one. Next time we see you, we'll be looking at the houses of Lancaster and York and this period known as the Wars of the Roses. So we'll see you then. You can now say goodbye. You're not going to? Okay. So goodbye. See you next time.
And now we know about the second period Plantagenets, which we've called the Plantagenets again. Really tough period for England because the population was almost cut in half. As we told you, there were two main reasons. There was a terrible famine around 1315, really heavy rain, crops were lost, no weather forecast really in those days, so nobody knew it was going to happen. And then the plague, which killed off probably a couple of million maybe people. As a comparison, the number of deaths from COVID was, I think, 250,000. So that was quite a large amount of population loss for famine, malnutrition, starvation, and through the Black Death. And although we say the Black Death occurred once, 1348, there were plagues going on all over the country on a very small scale for a lot of that time. In fact, when we come to the Stuarts, 1665, there was the plague in London. We'll tell you more about that then. So, what are we going to make? Well, you're going to have a go at cooking. You're going to make something called rastons, which was quite popular at this time. But before that, there's two other things I thought you might like to do. Places began to have street names, and those street names often related to workers who had their, not factories because they were working on their own, had their little workshops in that area. So a man who makes barrels is called a cooper. Cooper's Lane, Cooper's Road. If you've got that around you, that's what that was. If you were making arrows, pretty useful for the soldiers, then you were a fletcher. If you worked with leather, you were a tanner. So any of those sort of things. So if you want something to do, go and have a look and see what a few other people were called. You know about blacksmiths and things like that. You may well find Forge Lane. Who knows? Have a look. Oh, the final thing you can just have a fun go at is look at yourself in a spoon. One way up, the other way up. The question is, if you looked at yourself in a fork, would that be a 3D image? Forget it, watch the video.
Yes, we're back again. In case you hadn't noticed, I was bowing to you in some form of reverence. Anyway, it's another have a go, and this one is to do with food again. No, and it's nothing to do with voles. It's to do with something called the Assize of Bread Act. No, it's not that sort of size, so it's not the size that the loaf is. It's something completely different. A size, above Owlbut's head, is a court sitting. A time when a court will sit, known as the Assizes. And in time it came to mean a law that was passed through custom and practice. Now about this time, 1300 or so, more and more bakers were setting up, and people were not baking their own bread, they were taking it to the bakers and the baker would bake it and charge them for it. Now this allowed the possibility for some dishonest people to charge rather too much. So this Assize of Bread and Ale Act came out stating, for the first time ever, it was the first ever act that defined how food should be made and sold and the price that should be charged for it. And it was to do with both ale so how brewers put the ingredients in their ale, and more importantly with bread. And it said that the price of bread and the weight you could charge and the size of the loaf all depended on the price of wheat, etc., etc. It was a very, very complicated act. And we don't understand it. Thank you for speaking for me, but in this case you're right, I have no idea what it was. It was all done in Old English, so it didn't actually simply say the loaf must be 46 centimetres long or whatever. It actually used old measurements and old coinage, but basically it was a rule that bakers had to make their bread of a certain size and charge a certain price for it, all over the country. And as I say, it was the first ever act that regulated food making in some way, and it stayed in force till about 1800, Victorian times. So it was quite an important act, and we thought that what we'd do is make some bread. You like bread, but you only get left with the crumbs, yes. So around about this time there was a form of bread, a roll, called a raston. And we thought we'd have a go at making that. So that's what we're going to do this week for you. Tell you how to do it. You can do it. You might like it. Might be quite tasty. Who knows? We've never done it yet. We'll wait and see. But anyway, we're going to do that this week, and then we'll be back next week. And we'll be making flowers. If we made the flour this week, we could put it in the bread. Different spelling of flour. Yes, I know you don't like the language, but anyway. We'll be making that sort of flour. Okay? No, you can't see it now, it's gone. Okay, so we'll see you next week. Bye!
Okay, now if you've watched our England on the plate cookery things, this is going to be nothing like it. Add 200 grams of plain flour to a bowl. Sieve it so it hasn't got any lumps in it. Then add 7 gram dried yeast, a couple of spoonfuls of sugar, and a beaten egg, and mix them all together. Then add some warm water. It depends how much. What you're trying to do is make a nice dough. So just keep adding water. Don't add too much at first. And when you've got your sort of doughy shape in the bowl, make sure you pick up all the flour that's on the bottom of the bowl. There we are. Then take that out of the bowl. But before you do that, make sure you put some flour on your work surface so the dough doesn't stick to it. Get the dough and knead it for about 10 minutes. When you've done that, put it back in the bowl, and when it's back in the bowl, cover it. I use cling film, you can use a wet damp cloth, and then put it in a warm place for about an hour or so. Meanwhile, you are going to make clarified butter. What you do is you drop 225 grams of butter in a saucepan and heat it gently. Now, butter is not just butter, there's lots of things added to it, and clarified butter is pure butter. So once it's heated through, pour it through a sieve, get rid of all the bits you don't want, and you should have in your jug some beautiful pure clarified butter. There it is. You can take the frothy bits off, as I did. Right, put that to one side. Go off and get your dough that should have risen to about twice the size. Put some more flour on a work surface, and when the dough has risen to twice its size, bring it back and knead it again for about another 10 minutes. There it is, twice its size. So, there you are, kneading again. Once you've kneaded it again, you then put it back in and off it goes. this time for perhaps 15-20 minutes. There it is. Now it doesn't need flour because it's not sticky anymore. So then, in my case, I'm making 4 of these rastons. So cut them into 4, make them into a roll shape, and put them on a lightly greased baking tray. There they are, all 4 of them. Then put them in the oven for about 30 minutes. I then did what King Alfred did and went off and talked to my sister and forgot them. So they are now slightly overcooked. Don't cook yours that much, but you can still do the same recipe as I did, or the same instructions as I did. Take your raston, cut the top off it. There we go. For those of you who think these cookery programs are all done properly and you keep going till you get it right, not when it's me. Then with a spoon, take the middle out of your raston and put it in a bowl. Do it with all 4 of them, which I did. Then break up the bits you've taken out into smaller pieces. There we go. Once you've done that, you then reheat very, very gently your clarified butter and put all those pieces of bread into it. Stir it in so that the butter is absorbed by the bread. And then you spoon those bits of bread and butter back into your raston. And you then also put the lid back on, and put the top back on. There we are. Back in the oven for another 10 minutes, which probably mine didn't really need. Out of the oven after 10 minutes. That's the quickest 10 minutes of my life. And there they are. Slightly overcooked Alfred the Great rastons. But if you look inside, not bad. Okay, so that period saw the end of the Plantagenets, and now we're going to move on again with another one next week. I'll see you then. Oh, except...
So this was a time when those good old historians had another brilliant piece of naming as the 100-Year War.
Exactly. 1337, Edward declared war on France.
Which obviously the actual King of France didn't like, because 100 years is a long time for a war to go on.
Yes, but it wasn't actually 100 years of constant war. It was a battle here, and then a few years, another battle somewhere else, and
So it was 100 years with just the odd battle.
Sort of, yes. Sort of. I suppose you could say that, yeah.
But it finally ended in 1437.
No, it ended in 1453.
Oh, so the 100-Year War was actually 116 years. With a few battles occasionally.
Yes.
Right.
You're going to want to rename history, aren't you, really?
Well, just telling the truth.
Okay.
Bit misleading, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, in future when people learn about it, we won't mention the 100 Years War, we'll say the 116 years of occasional battle.
Yeah.
You'll be happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Small right, that's...
Okay, I can't wait till we get to 1944 and the Second World War, and you discover that some people didn't join in. The second, nearly all of the World War.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.